Good afternoon, Maggie. How are you feeling today? Allison, my dear, it's good to see you. I am hanging in there, but I must admit it gets lonely in this hospital bed. I'm here for you, Maggie. I'll visit you every day until you're fully recovered. Thank you, my dear. You've been a blessing to me, especially during this time. I must say, though, I'm disappointed that James hasn't come to see me once. I've noticed that too, Maggie. I'm sorry. It's been difficult for both of us. Our marriage hasn't been what I had hoped for. I've noticed, dear. It breaks my heart to see how he treats you. You deserve so much better. I had such high hopes when we got married, but things changed. He became distant and cold. James, he's not the sweet boy you once knew. He's lost his way, but you, my dear, you have been a pillar of strength. I've tried my best to make our marriage work, but it's been so difficult. I know, my dear, and I see your efforts, but sometimes we can't change someone else. We can only change ourselves and the choices we make. What are you saying? Allison, there's something I haven't told anyone. What is it, Maggie? You have to keep it from James. Promise me. I promise, Maggie. My name is Allison, and a few years ago, I married my husband James. Like any newlywed, I had hopes of a loving partnership, but life has a way of surprising us, and my journey took an unexpected turn. When we first got together, I was relying on James financially due to my ongoing health condition. I hoped he would understand and support me during this challenging time. But as the years went by, his attitude began to change. It felt as if a wall had been built between us, separating our hearts and minds. James started to use threatening language, implying that he didn't want to be there for me anymore. He made it clear that I would be utterly alone if he ever chose to leave.
I don't know why you expect me to stick around if things don't change. If I were to walk out that door, you'd be left all alone. Do you think anyone else would want to be burdened with someone like you? You're lucky I've stayed this long. No one else would tolerate your laziness. You would be left to fend for yourself, and trust me, you won't last a day.
We had frequent arguments, and I was incredibly stressed for a very long time. James had an expectation that the house should be kept spotless, saying that his demanding work schedule had already tired him enough. It felt as though my efforts to maintain our home were never enough. He would complain about everything: the food I cooked, the time I took the trash out, the little stain on the fridge. Nothing was good enough for him. But there was more. James's abusive behavior cast a shadow over my desire to bring children into our life. I yearned for a nurturing and loving home for my future kids, but it never felt like the right time to do that. And so, having kids became a subject of fear rather than joy to me. To make matters worse, my mother-in-law Maggie would often inquire about grandchildren. Her innocent curiosity stressed me out even more. The constant reminders of what I hadn't achieved only heightened my feelings of inadequacy. The heaviness of our circumstances weighed on my heart. My marriage was not what I had envisioned, and the challenges we faced seemed unbearable. The combination of financial dependence, constant threats, and societal expectations created a toxic environment, and I wondered if I could ever find happiness. Just when I thought everything was going downhill, something fortunate happened. Months of tirelessly sending out applications finally paid off, and I landed a customer service position at a reputable company. It wasn't the most glamorous job ever, but it offered stability and hope in my life. However, just as things were starting to look up, something else struck my luck. One fateful day, my dear mother-in-law suffered a heart attack. It was a terrible situation, but I knew I had to act swiftly. Fortunately, I had just come back home from a grocery run when Maggie collapsed on the floor. Without hesitation, I rushed her to the hospital, desperately clinging to the hope that medical professionals could save her. For over a month, Maggie remained in the hospital, fighting for survival. During this trying time, I expected James, her own son, to be by her side, offering comfort and support. However, he remained absent from the hospital room. Days turned into weeks, and still there was no sign of him. Whenever we called him, James always had an excuse, saying things like he's too busy with work to show up. Each time I heard his voice on the other end of the line, my heart sank a little deeper. When his mother's life hung in the balance, he had chosen to turn a blind eye to her suffering. I couldn't comprehend how he could neglect his own mother, a woman who had dedicated her life to raising him with love and care. It was a betrayal that cut deep. In the face of adversity, I discovered a newfound strength within myself. The days were long and draining, but I pushed forward, attending to Maggie's needs. It was in those moments that I realized the power of love and the importance of being there for someone, no matter the circumstances. Every single day, I visited Maggie at the hospital. The emptiness in her eyes broke my heart as she talked about the absence of her own son, James. It was a painful reality that she had to endure, feeling alone and abandoned during such a vulnerable time. I approached my employer and mustered up the courage to ask for permission to work remotely. Understanding the gravity of my situation, they granted my request, allowing me to be present for Maggie. I really wanted to be there for Maggie, not just as a daughter-in-law, but as a friend and ally. She had always been kind to me, even at times when James and I were going through a rough patch, so that was the least I could do. It was during that period that our bond grew stronger. I still remember that day when she cried to me for the very first time. She had always been a strong and positive woman, and I had never seen her cry before.
Good afternoon, Maggie. How are you feeling today?
Allison, my dear, it's good to see you. I am hanging in there, but I must admit it gets lonely in this hospital bed.
I'm here for you, Maggie. I'll visit you every day until you're fully recovered.
Thank you, my dear. You've been a blessing to me, especially during this time. I must say, though, I'm disappointed that James hasn't come to see me once.
I've noticed that too, Maggie. I'm sorry. It's been difficult for both of us. Our marriage hasn't been what I had hoped for.
I've noticed, dear. It breaks my heart to see how he treats you. You deserve so much better. I had such high hopes when we got married, but things changed. He became distant and cold. James, he's not the sweet boy you once knew. He's lost his way, but you, my dear, you have been a pillar of strength. I've tried my best to make our marriage work, but it's been so difficult. I know, my dear, and I see your efforts, but sometimes we can't change someone else. We can only change ourselves and the choices we make.
What are you saying?
Allison, there's something I haven't told anyone.
What is it, Maggie?
You have to keep it from James. Promise me.
I promise, Maggie.
After that conversation, I knew I was doing the right thing.
Maggie had let me in on a secret that would later change everything in our lives.
I decided to move into Maggie's house, which was much closer to the hospital. That allowed me to go back and forth more easily, ensuring that I could be by her side whenever she needed me.
The decision was a small sacrifice in the grand scheme of things, a way to provide the support that Maggie deserved. As I settled into Maggie's house, I actually felt better. It seemed like I really needed to be away from James for a while. However, James didn't do well in my absence. His attitude seemed to deteriorate further. Despite my new career and the responsibilities of caring for his mother, he expected me to keep our house spotless still. Then, on one fateful day, James brought forth divorce papers. He wielded those documents as a thread, as if they were a weapon to break me. But something within me shifted. I wasn't scared of being alone anymore. I took the pen he offered me and calmly began filling out the divorce papers right before his eyes. There was a stunned silence as James watched. His earlier confidence disappeared. In a desperate attempt to assert his dominance and regain control, James resorted to yet another thread.
Oh, so you think you've suddenly found some backbone, huh? Don't delude yourself, Allison.
What does that even mean?
You're replaceable, just like anyone else. I could leave you in a heartbeat and find someone better.
James, I deserve respect and happiness, just like anyone else.
You're being naive, Allison. No one else will ever put up with you the way I have. You'll be alone and miserable without me. Mark my words.
I deserve to be with someone who values me and treats me with love and kindness. If you choose to leave it, it will be your loss, not mine.
You think you're so strong now, don't you? Well, I hope you enjoy a lonely, miserable life. Don't come running back to me when you realize what a mistake you've made.
I won't, James. I'm moving forward and leaving this behind. This time, his words no longer held sway over me. I had found a newfound resolve, a glimmer of self-worth that refused to be diminished. Without hesitation, I packed my bags, ready to leave behind everything I had built with James. Standing before him, I made it clear that I was divorcing him for real. It was a declaration that echoed the strength and conviction I had discovered within myself. As I took those final steps towards the door, a mix of emotions coursed through my veins. There was fear of the unknown, the uncertainty of what lay ahead, but there was also a knowledge that I was finally breaking free from abuse and unhappiness. At that moment, I realized that my journey towards healing and self-empowerment had only just begun. The decision to walk away from a toxic relationship was not an easy one, but it was necessary for my own well-being and happiness. With each step I took, the weight of James' manipulation was lifted from my shoulders, replaced by a sense of liberation. Just a few days after that, James called me in a panic. The moment I saw how crazy he was acting, I knew what was happening. He must have discovered the secret that Maggie told me about that day. Hello, James. What's going on?
Allison, I don't understand. How could this happen? I just found out that my mom has disqualified me from the family's inheritance. What did you do?
James, you need to calm down. She made a decision that she believed was right based on your actions.
This is ridiculous. How could she do this to me? She was my mother.
James, you abandoned your own mother when she needed you the most. You thought she had nothing on you. Such behavior should never be rewarded in any way.
But it's my inheritance. I deserve it.
Deserve? James, you turned your back on your own mother, leaving her alone and in need. Inheritance isn't solely about entitlement. It's about the love and care shared between family members.
You don't understand, Allison. This is all unfair.
Maggie's decision was hers to make, and I respected it.
I can't believe this. It's all gone.
Maybe this can serve as a wake-up call, James. And just as I expected, James found out that Maggie had intervened, disqualifying him from her inheritance, but I couldn't care less about him. What he didn't know was that his inheritance would soon be mine. I initiated the process of filing divorce papers, determined to sever all ties with James. As the legal matters unfolded, a startling discovery emerged. James's father had left behind a substantial amount of money, totaling $700,000. Maggie had legally signed to ensure that most of the sum would be mine. She set up a fund for James, though, which was worth around $100,000, but only in the case where he kept a clean record and stable jobs. It was an act of love and support, a final gift from a wise woman who knew who to trust and who to look out for. After knowing about this arrangement, James tried to sue me for stealing his money away from him. Sadly, just after a few months after that, Maggie passed away. Her presence, which had brought solace and strength during the darkest hours, was now but a cherished memory. In her honor, I chose to donate half of the inherited money to various charities, understanding that there were others in need who could benefit from it. The remaining half of the money helped me with personal growth and professional advancement. I enrolled in language classes seeking to expand my horizons and embrace new opportunities. The dedication I poured into these studies paid off, and after a few years, I proudly assumed the role of a manager at my company. It was a reminder that the pursuit of personal growth and success was not limited by the constraints of my past. Meanwhile, James was left in a state of emotional desolation. He lost the case against me, of course, because I was inheriting Maggie's fund legally. James was ordered to pay for a settlement. He even constantly attempted to reach out to me. He came to my office making a scene at every chance he could. I made the difficult decision to call the authorities, seeking protection from his behavior. He lost his job, and together with it, he lost the $100,000 that his mom had left for him. James became a broke and bitter loser who didn't even know he had brought all of those things on himself. As time moved forward, the scars of my past began to fade. I embraced the opportunities that life had presented me, forging ahead with strength and resilience. A few years after that, I met someone who really appreciated and loved me for who I am. We have been together for a few years now, and we are talking about bringing a child into this world. I am so happy and hopeful now, knowing that it will only go up from here.